So we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 2. We're finally starting in chapter 2. And tonight we're going to talk about something that it involves all of us. This is something that I could preach to myself every day. One of these things that is just, it's relevant in almost everything that we do in our life. And it's just talking about the way and the path at which we live our lives. And the book of Hebrews is one of those books that, like I said when I started this, that I've used the book of Hebrews a lot in stuff that I have taught over the years, but I've never sat and taught through the book of Hebrews, and it's helped me a bunch just to be able to see the history and to see the way things are connecting in this book. But tonight, again, one of those things that I have mentioned before and something that I've taught, but it makes a whole lot more relevant sense after studying through some of the history and stuff. So again, we're going to start in Hebrews chapter 2, and we're going to start in verse 1. It says, "We must therefore pay even more attention to what we have heard, so that we will not drift away. For if the message spoken through angels was legally binding, and every transgression and disobedience received a just punishment, how will we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? It was first spoken by the Lord and was confirmed to us by those who heard him. And at the same time, God also testified by signs and wonders, various miracles, and distributions of gifts from the Holy Spirit according to his will." So how many of you can remember, or even think about maybe this week or in times past, wanting something so bad that you would do almost anything to get it? Can you think of any time in your life? I know my 7-year-old that's getting ready to be 8 next Monday or next Tuesday is that way. Everything is commercialized and everything is on the Disney Channel. "Daddy, I want that." "Daddy, I want that." Or "Daddy, I want this." Or "Daddy, I want that." All my children are like that. They're 8 and 4 and 4. And so right now, all those things are just so exciting. Everything that's new and fresh and just, but they think about everything they want. Everything's just right there in front of us. And there's been things in our lives, each and every one of us, that we've wanted so bad that we would do almost anything to get it. And I can think, and I'm sure all of you can think about all the stupid things that we've done to make those things happen. The most ignorant things, the justifications, the things that we tell ourselves like, "Oh, I have got to have that right now. And if I can just do this, I can get that." Or if I just, quit this or do whatever, we'll do all kinds of crazy things just to kind of make whatever it is that we're wanting come to pass. But I want you to think about this more in relationships than I do in things. So guys, I'm going to talk to y'all directly right now. How many of our famous stories that we tell involve this statement? "Hey y'all, watch this"? A bunch of us. And then it generally ends with something that doesn't turn out so very well because we've done something that is completely stupid. I would almost bet that every guy in here has said at least this to one person or another. And I'll quote, "It's a wonder with all the stupid stuff that we've done that we are still alive." I'm 41, and I promise you, I can say that it's a wonder I've made it this far. It really is. Now, ladies, how many of you here have a husband, or had a husband, or have a significant other? That's most of us in here. If you can answer this question with a yes, and I promise you that you are the proud owner of a human that did something crazy just to win your affection. Every one of you in here. Because if you're extremely fortunate, then you're still sitting beside that same person. They're still doing crazy things to keep your affection. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And that's what I believe that Hebrews chapter 2 is pointing to. Next Monday, which is September 24th of 2018, Hannah and I will have been married 13 years. That's pretty amazing. Don't clap for me. Don't clap for me. Everybody turn around and clap for Hannah. She absolutely deserves a gold medal, a trophy, and whatever else she can get just for putting up for me. She's earned every bit of it, I promise you. But here's one of the great things. I can remember with great detail. So I don't know if you've ever heard me talk before in stories, but I'm the historian of the family, okay? My wife is not the historian. She can't remember what I was wearing the first day we met. I can remember what she was wearing the first day that we met, which is lucky for me. but she don't remember any of that stuff. But listen, I can remember the great details of the beginning of our relationship. You see, up until that point, and still to this day, if you knew me very well, I'm what you would call awkward. And for most people, and what I tell most people is, I'm a weirdo. Okay? And I know it. All right? If you ask me and somebody comes up to it, I'm going to tell you, well, what's wrong with you? I'm a weirdo. And I know it. I 100% know that I am a weirdo. I do stupid stuff. I do crazy things. I'm just that person. And so growing up, I'm just awkward. I was one of those awkward guys, super shy, didn't want to talk. I'm telling you, if you knew me when I was younger, me sitting here would be just an absolute confirmation of what God has done in my life. Just an absolute confirmation, because I'm not the person that wants to get up and stand in front and talk to people. I'm not the person that wants to be out in front and where everybody can see me. That's just not me normally. I'm just shy, one of those people that didn't talk to a whole lot of people. And so here's the crazy thing. I was one of those people that you hated in school. Not hated because I was a jerk or anything else like that, but I was one of those people that just got it. I understood school, and I was good at school. I was good with homework and all this other stuff. I was just good at school. But here's one of those things. They didn't teach talking to girls in school. They didn't teach that in high school, and they didn't teach it in college either. That wasn't one of those things. Social skills are not one of those things they teach in school. And I grew up with an older brother. And if you don't know this, here's a little secret. Older brothers and people that you go to school with are the stupidest people when it comes to dating advice. They give horrible, horrible advice. And I don't understand it, because you would think that we would be wise enough that as human beings, as a teenager that knows everything, that we would be smart enough to not look at our friends as the ultimate source of dating advice. You would think that we would look to somebody that's been married 30 or 40 years like, how do I do this? No. We look to the person that has just broke up 13 times with the same person. Matter of fact, they probably broke up 10 minutes before they gave you the advice. And here's the great thing. And you know how I know they were stupid? Because they all knew exactly what women wanted. Every one of them. They had all the girls. I got it figured out. This is what you do. The crazy thing is that we chose to get our advice most of the time from people who are single and has the dating experience of a toddler. Seriously. I mean, that's the way that we grew up in life. We all do it. All teenagers still do it. They look at their parents, they look at people around and like, you're an idiot. You have no idea what you're doing. So when I met Hannah, I've told you before, and if you never heard my testimony, it took a divine intervention of the ordinary course of nature to even bring us together. Because I didn't date. I didn't go out to bars. I didn't go out to places where you would meet girls, because generally that's how you do it. You show up to places where single girls live, or girls go on a regular basis. And I just didn't do that. And I had basically told God at this point in time in my life, I was 28. I told God basically that, or 27, I was getting ready to be 28. I told God that, look, I'm done dating. I'm done with this. Unless you make her show up magically in front of me, I'm done with this whole dating thing. And it worked. She showed up. But it had literally been 8 years since I had been on a date when my sister-in-law came to me and said, hey, I have someone I want you to meet. And I rolled my eyes in the back of my head, because I don't do blind dates. I'm just like, nah. And I was almost shocked. I was literally shocked she even brought it up to me, because she knew me well enough. I'm picky. I was really picky at the time with food and clothing and everything else. But she also said at the exact same moment that she said, I have someone I need you to meet, she also said, hey, don't screw this up. And I'm like, really? Come on. So what did I do? Oh, yeah. I'm still doing that, brother. Every day. So what I did what every guy does when you're going to meet a girl for the first time. I'd got a haircut. I took a shower, brushed my teeth. I made sure I didn't smell like a goat. I put on some of the nicest blue jeans I own. I cleaned up my truck. I mean, I put forth a whole lot of effort into somebody I had never met a day in my life. I didn't have a clue what she looked like, first of all. But I just knew my sister-in-law said, hey, I got somebody you need to meet and don't screw this up. So when I finally met Hannah, you can only imagine. If you've been around me long enough, you can only imagine how my imagination went. I promise you, the first thing that went through my mind was, woo! I have won the blind date lottery. I mean, she was gorgeous. And I'm like, I looked at my sister-in-law and I'm like, you did okay. You did okay. But now here was the hard part. She had got us, had us join there to meet. But now I needed to convince this person that she needed to spend a whole lot of time with me. Again, you're talking to a guy who was 27 years old, hadn't been on a date in 8 years, and I'm looking at it and I'm awkward. I'm telling you, I'm completely awkward. And I'm like, what we do? Now here's what's cool, okay? We didn't meet on like the greatest of circumstances. We didn't meet at like the most convenient place in the world, which is perfect for our relationship because it sums up everything that we do. We met at a deaf basketball game. A deaf basketball game. How many of you ever been to a deaf basketball game? Hey, there's one person back here. Hey, there's another one. All right. Loudest thing I've ever been to in my entire life. Loudest thing I have ever been into my entire life. And so I had no clue what was going on. I know there was a whole lot of hands flying. There was a whole lot of people doing stuff. There was a person beating a bass drum the entire time that we were there. Loud, just sensory overload going on. And I had Hannah sitting beside of me. She was like my play-by-play expert. It was easy. I didn't have to make up stuff to talk about because she was just telling me what everybody else was saying. And so she's watching in the huddle. And so if you know Hannah, she's an interpreter. That's what she does. And so I didn't know this. Okay. When you interpret, you have to put the emotion that the person is putting into their signing into your interpretation. So my wife, was sitting there as the coach was just giving these players just down the road with all of his hand movements, everything else. Hannah was interpreting with that same emotion. It was amazing. It was absolutely awesome. I would recommend going to a deaf basketball game with an interpreter anytime. It is awesome. And like I said, it's a really good thing that God was involved with this because I promise you, if God wasn't involved in this, if it would have been just my natural self meeting Hannah, this would be a whole lot of different story. I'd be sitting here telling you about some kids I want in life, not the 3 kids I got. So what does that all have to do with Hebrews chapter 2? It has everything to do with Hebrews chapter 2. Because the author starts off the chapter with a very stern warning. It says, we must therefore pay even more attention to what we have heard so that we will not drift away. So think about all those relationships. Like I said, I can remember the beginning of mine and Hannah's relationship. But I can remember those first few weeks, those first few days, those first few months. That's what most people call the discovery phase of a relationship. Your eyes are focused on everything that person's doing. Your ears are focused on everything that they're saying. Your nose is attuned to the way they smell. Your sense of touch is like the first time you got to hold hands, the first time she brushed up against you. You have a person's full attention during that first discovery part of a relationship. Why is that? Why is that? Why do we do that? I like to think it's just because it's something new. It's something fresh. It's something exciting. You want to learn absolutely everything you can about that person. And I don't know about anyone else, but when I met Hannah, listen, I was willing to do anything to spend more time with her. If I had hours upon hours to sit here and tell you stories, I can tell you all the stories of all the things that my wife has made me do. One of the things that my wife has made me do is hike. I don't hike. I hadn't been on a hike ever. My dad used to go hunting and take me with him hunting. And he used to fuss at me from the moment that I got out of the truck to the moment we got back in the truck. Because I don't know what quiet is supposed to be. The first time that my dad took me hunting, I was about 9 years old. And he got me up at the crack of dawn. It's in the middle of November. It's right before Thanksgiving. It's cold. He got me all bundled up. He put me in a truck, drove me out into the middle of the woods somewhere. We got out of the truck and he said, shh. Now, Avery, my 4-year-old that you saw running around here bouncing off the wall, that's me. 100%. Exactly. Just exactly like I was when I was little. Bounced off every wall full of energy. Sitting still and being quiet was not a forte of mine at all. And so we get out of the truck and he's like, shh. And my dad was not a patient human being. Love him to death, but he was not a patient human being. And so we start walking through the woods, and instead of walking, I'm dragging my feet. And I'm rustling leaves, and I'm snapping twigs. And for him, with his super sensitive hearing, I'm scaring off every deer within a 100-mile radius of the tree stand or the tree seat that we're getting ready to hook up. And the whole time he's like, "You gotta be quiet. You gotta be quiet." And myself was like, "Why? Why?" He's like, "You're gonna scare the deer off." Why? So he takes me out in the middle of the woods. He took tree seats, these things that we tied around that had this snap that you snapped around the trees. We didn't go up in a tree. We just sat on the ground. He hands me this 16-gauge shotgun that I could not cock. That the whole plan, the entire time that we were there, we had talked about was, hey, if you see a deer, now he's on the other side of the tree, like right behind me. He's like, you see a deer, you hand me the gun, I'm going to cock it, I'm going to hand it back, and then you're going to shoot it. That's the plan. Everybody got the plan? That was the plan. All right? I'm 9. I'm the most literal human being, just like that 7-year-old back there. You don't say things out of line because I'm going to correct you. That was the plan. I had the plan memorized. I hand you the gun, you cock it, you hand it back, I shoot the deer. Not a problem. Got it. Got the plan. So we're in the tree. We've been there about an hour. I'm like, Daddy. He's like, what? I said, I'm hungry. It's not time to eat yet. Why? Listen, this was not a good day for him. And so we were sitting there, and we'd been sitting there. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, Daddy. He's like, what? I was like, I gotta pee. You can't pee. I gotta pee. And he said, well, go over there and pee. And I'm like, okay, so I hand him the gun. I go over there and pee, and I come back and I sit down on the tree stand or the tree seat. About 30 minutes later, there's a doe that shows up. Now listen, I have the most awesome hunting story. Most hunters never get to tell this story, but this is all 100% true. There was a doe that shows up, and this doe comes walking up. My dad's like, shh, be quiet. So I'm sitting there. The doe literally walks in about 4 foot away from me and just stares at me. And my dad's like, don't move. I'm like, I'm trying not to move. And he's like, don't move. And so I close my eyes and I'm sitting there. And I'd take one eye and I'd wink up at it, trying to look, see if that deer was there. Deer were still there. And so after, it seemed like forever. I don't know how long it was, but it seemed like forever. I have sat as still as a 9-year-old could possibly sit forever. And I'm like, Daddy, can I shoot it? And he's like, no, you can't shoot it. And I'm like, deer just standing there, just looking at me. Like, okay. So finally, the deer hears something, his ears pop up, and it runs off. So I'm sitting there. And I'm like, oh, that was pretty cool. And he's like, that was pretty cool. I was like, yeah, I'm hungry. He's like, you can't eat yet. I'm hungry. And so he'd brought sausages and crackers or something. So we took we finally ate something. And so he was getting more and more aggravated with me as the moment. Listen, every hour on the hour, there was something else that had to happen. I needed to get up and walk around. I needed to pee 100 times. I needed to do something. Sitting still in this tree was not the way things were going to go. Well, we had been there, and we had ate lunch, and it was after lunch. Well, all of a sudden, here comes a deer and a doe, a buck chasing a doe, just hustling through the woods, flying. It's a big buck, come flying through there. My dad got all excited. He's like, look, 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 and it just took off, never stopped. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then we sat there a little bit longer, and I got up and peed 13 more times, and I begged him for something to eat another 100 times while we were sitting there. And then it started to get dusk, and it was probably 3:30, 4 o'clock. And all of a sudden, out in the woods, here comes this huge buck. And to this day, listen, I don't know how big it was. I say it was a 10-point. It was the biggest animal. I was 9. It was the biggest animal I'd ever seen in my entire life. I have no idea it was. 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Big deer standing within like 50 yards of the tree. Everybody got the plan? What's the plan? The plan is I hand the gun to Daddy. He cocks it. He hands it back to me. I shoot it. Big deer, 50 yards away, perfectly in my sight. Like, okay, here's the plan. Daddy. I turned around to hand the gun to my dad because this is the plan. My dad, in general, turns around because he's going to shoot said deer. Biggest deer he'd ever saw. So I turn around to hand the gun. He turns around, hits me with the butt of the gun, like somewhere right in here, knocks me out of the tree seat. 16 gauge goes flying. He jumps up, shoots, misses deer. Deer runs off. He is madder than 40 eggs. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, you said, I see deer, I hand you gun, you cock gun, you hand back, I shoot deer. And he's like, and then, and I'm like, well, that's what you said. That was the plan. And so he just huffed a minute, and he sat back down on the tree stand, and I sat back there, and I know he was mad. I know at the time I didn't know he was mad. Now I know he was mad. And he was sitting there, and I could hear him over there breathing. And about 10 minutes later, I was like, Daddy. He's like, what? I was like, I got to pee. He's like, we got to go. And about that time, here come a raccoon walking through the thing. And I'm like, Daddy, can I shoot the raccoon? And he's like, no, you can't shoot the raccoon. And I'm like, you have got to let me shoot something. And he's like, we're not shooting the raccoon. I'm like, So now I'm mad. And so we walk back to the truck, and I'm crunching leaves the entire time as we're getting back in the truck. And we get home, and I walk in the door, and Mama said, well, how was it? I said, horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I said, Daddy wouldn't let me shoot anything. He hits me with a gun. I said, and he wouldn't let me pee. And Mama's like, well, it'll be okay. And so he comes in the kitchen. He's like, well, are you going back with me tomorrow? No, I'm not going back with you ever. I'm not doing this ever again. And he's like, well, why? I said, you hit me with a gun. And he's like, well, I was trying to. I said, you broke the plan. You broke the plan. And so he's like, well, something, I don't know what all he said. But anyway, that's the last time I went deer hunting with my dad ever. Wasn't going to do it. That just wasn't my thing. So when I meet my wife decides that we need to go hiking. Let's go hike South Mountain State Park. Me, like an idiot, think, yeah, let's go hang out with your wife. Let's do what she wants to do. Let's go hike South Mountain State Park. Now, mind you, this was me 50 pounds heavier with no exercise. I wasn't in shape to walk anywhere. To the grocery store, maybe. That was about it. And so she takes me out through South Mountain State Park, and we're walking. And all of a sudden, it dawns on me. how far are we going to walk? And she's like, well, it's just a few miles. A few miles. And she said, yeah, I think this trail's 4 miles. And I'm like, Hannah, are you talking like 4 miles in a circle? Or are you talking 4 miles one way? She said, well, I think it's 4 miles one way. I said, Hannah, that's 8 miles. We got to come back. And she was like, well, you'll be okay. So me, being the techie person that I am, I had my iPhone. I pulled my iPhone out. Listen, I wish I still had these recordings. I was making Star Trek recordings like Stardate. It's this time. If you find me on this trail, it's because my wife brought me out here and I died. It's all her fault. She's taken me to do things that I would just not normally do. But why did I do that? It was because I wanted to spend time with her. I wanted to get to know her. It was the thing I wanted to do. And so that's what brings us back here to Hebrews. Listen, the Hebrew Christians that this letter is written to, they started out with such zeal towards God. They were so excited. They were so excited that they'd left their Jewish faith, which was huge back then. That was such a big step that we take for granted. They walked away from everything just to follow Christ. They left their entire identity just to pick up the identity of Christ. They had left. But now, when this letter's written, we're 30 years past that point. Christ has died and risen. It's a story that was told then, but now, like I said, it wasn't like social media was around. It wasn't something that they got a Facebook message every day that says, if you love Jesus, post this or share this or tell somebody about it. This was not new news anymore. They were starting to be persecuted. They were starting to live the hardships of what it meant to be outside of the Jewish faith. It was literally a chore. It was a work for them to be Christians at that time. It wasn't easy. And so when Paul, or the writer of this book, says, therefore now we must pay closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. What had they heard? Think about it. Listen, they didn't have the New Testament sitting in their hand that they could read daily. They had to live off the testimony of others. They had to live off the stories that they had heard, the things that they had witnessed, the things that they had went along in their own life. They had to find others that was just like them. They had to meet irregularly. Things were not exactly like they thought it would be. And so now they had to hold on to something that, hey, they weren't seeing. Listen, when this was written, the new Christians believed that Jesus was coming back at that very moment. They thought it was going to be the next day. They didn't realize that it was going to be many, many years now. They didn't realize that we would be sitting here some 2,000 years later talking about the second coming of Christ. And so their faith was being tested all the time. And many of them were at the point where like, listen, we've got to go back. We can't do business anymore. We miss our family. We miss all the things that we had known before. All the things that they had become familiar with. And that's the thing that the writer is talking about. It's that familiarity. Listen, when we start a relationship, think about the relationships you have with each other. I can remember I can remember the beginning of my relationship with Hannah, and it was so amazing. The really cool thing that we do is we try to keep that in front of us. We try to keep that idea and let that idea be in front of us that we don't stay familiar with each other because it's so easy. And we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. Hannah's guilty of it. There takes times in our relationship where we just almost neglect one another because we're in that comfort zone. We're in the place that we know. Things can be so easy right where we are. We can become so content. And that's what the writer is saying. Listen, pay attention even closer. The more that your faith is tested, the more the trials that you go on, you need to pay close attention to the things in your life lest you drift away. It's so easy. It's so easy to turn around and be in a relationship. It's so easy to be doing something and realize, oh my God, 3 years have passed. 13 years Hannah and I have been married. It doesn't seem like 13 years. My child turns 8 next Tuesday. It doesn't seem like 8 years has passed in time. All of my kids are in school. I got 2 in preschool and there, and we're going, listen, it doesn't seem like that long ago that they were crawling around the floor, making just baby noises that we didn't understand. Time flies. Time is short, and if we blink our eyes, we can neglect the things that are around us. The writer continues, says, for since the message declared by angels provided to be reliable, and every transgression or disobedience received a just retribution, how shall we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? I want you to think about this for a moment, because I'm going to make some pretty sobering statements that have bugged me all week. And I wrote them. Think about your life as a Christian. Think about the things in your life. How often do we neglect the very God that inhabits our lives? How often? How often do we take for granted that God is with us every single day? There's a song that's on the radio now that a lot of people give a lot of grief to, and I'm not going to argue with you about words and the words that it uses. It's the sentiment that means something to me. But the song is called Reckless Love. And the words go, says, before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. That's in Zechariah, by the way. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. And the chorus says, oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found. It leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it. I don't deserve it. Still, you gave yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. The second verse says, yeah, I was your foe. Still, your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And then again, you are the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Listen, it humbles me 100% as I'm studying this and reading this and writing this down. It humbles me to think that I neglect the love of God in my own life. It's so sobering to think. When you think about the very fact, people get so tore up about this word reckless love because it's like, oh, he doesn't give any thought. He's just careless about the thing he says. Listen, you know what it reminds me of? What it reminds me of is a circumstance that I was standing in my own life. And Jesus didn't care what I thought about it. Jesus and God did not care what I thought about the circumstance I was in. He didn't care what anybody else around me thought about the circumstance that I was going through. He didn't care how people would react. He didn't care what people would say about me. All he cared about was me. And to think the creator of this earth sent his very son to die on a cross for me is humbling. It's sobering to think that he loves me so much every day that he moved heaven and earth just for me. Humbling. And the problem is that we get familiar with the God that's on the inside of us. You run into people, you hear people preach messages, You hear people talk, and they tell you how big God really is. But yet you sit in your seat and you worry about tomorrow. You worry about what you're going to do the next day, what you're going to eat, how you're going to take care of your kids. You wonder about all these things. All these things consume us. But we take that moment and we neglect the very God of the universe is involved in my life. The moment that I take Hannah for granted, the moment that I start to neglect my wife, is the moment that we have the biggest arguments in our relationship. The biggest troubles I've ever had in my life are the moments that I can turn around and go, what am I doing? Lord, what am I doing? And I've neglected the very things that got me to the place where I am today. Every prayer that you pray, everything that you do, none of it is small. We take for granted, we neglect the salvation that is in our life. So here's the question. Have you become familiar with your spouse? Have you become familiar with your significant other? When was the last time you thought about the things that you did the first time that you met them? The things that you were willing to do at that moment. The things that in your mind you're like, wait a minute, if I do this, or if I do this, I can spend more time with that person. I can be around that person. You know what? I know that they love flowers. And if I bring home flowers, they're going to smile. Or they're going to do this. And it's not about the thing that you receive. It's that moment that you can remember when your relationship was fresh. When your relationship was exciting. When you would move and do anything just to spend more time with that person. Has our relationship with God become familiar? But now here's a couple things that you may not have thought about. Is the seat that you're sitting in right now, has it become familiar to you? And now here's the bigger question, and this is the question that has bothered me all week. Since last Wednesday when I was supposed to teach this. Is the empty chair sitting beside of you become so familiar to you? Think about it. Did you come in here tonight and sat down and looked around at the 40 people or so that are here and thought, this is what every Wednesday is like? This is what I expect. Have you become so familiar with the empty pew, with the empty seat, that you're okay with it? I know the moments in my life. I know them personally. And if you know me well enough, and if you know me any at all, I'm not an emotional person. I feel bad. I really do. I feel so bad for people because when they come up to me and tell me crazy stuff or something that's supposed to move my emotions, and I stand there like a rock, and I'm just like, I feel for you. I'm not going to shed a tear. I'm not going to cry. I apologize up front. If you come to me and put your shoulder on me and cry on me and you expect me to reciprocate, you're going to be sadly disappointed. And I apologize up front. I tell my wife that all the time. I just don't cry. It's not something I do. But it doesn't mean I don't feel things. And I know that I can look at my life, and I'm just one of those over-analytical people that sit and think about these things. I don't ever want to get so familiar with Hannah that it just becomes mundane. I don't want to just wake up tomorrow morning and just go through the routine of what we do because it's so easy for me to do. I'm a routine-oriented person. I can do things just over and over and over. I can drive to work, which takes me about an hour every day, with my eyes closed. I could literally do it. I'm just one of those people. But I know that about myself, and I know that I don't want to ever get to that point where Hannah's not important to me. That I neglect the very thing that I started with. Even more important, I don't ever want to get to that point with God. And I've done it. There's been points where I have just been in this almost dry season in my life, and it's because I'm just routine. I'm just going through the motions. And I don't ever want to walk in here or walk into any church service and think, this is it. We've reached the pinnacle. This is exactly what I was expecting. Listen, if I walk into church Sunday morning and there's 1,700 people here and it's a full capacity building, I don't want to be familiar with that. I want to be uneasy with that. Because, hey, if there's 1,700 people here now, we could run a second service and get 1,700 more people in here. If there's 120 seats down here on a Wednesday night, listen, we can move up to the sanctuary where we can fit 1,700 people. I don't want to be familiar. I want to pay attention. Especially in the times that we're living in. And I never want to neglect how great a salvation that we have. Let's stand.